What's going on, everybody? It's one of my favorite times of year. Spring is arriving and the sap is flowing. Quick little shout out before we get into this video. Check it out. Ben over at FiddleSticks, he's the one that helped us with our mailbox sign and the beehive logo, was generous enough to send us a new logo for the beehive since I screwed up on putting the first one on. You can check that video out by following the link in the upper corner of the screen. Along with the replacement logo, he sent us new hats. Ben, they turned out awesome. Thank you for that, man. If you're interested in getting a Green Acre hat of your own, please reach out to us privately via our email, which will be in the description of this video. Thank you for supporting our channel. Now, as I was saying, tapping maples. It's, the weather's been appropriate. Let's see. 4 days ago, I tapped 2 maple trees on my neighbor's property. I probably could have started tapping a week ago. With the temperatures being in the high 30s and the low 40s this past week, and actually for the next couple of weeks coming up, and still getting down to freezing at night occasionally. That's really the kind of conditions you want to start tapping in. The freezing at night and the thawing during the day is what creates pressure within the tree that pulls the sap through the capillaries in the tree from the root system up into the branches. Ultimately, the trees utilize the sap, the sugar content in the sap, to help bud out and create leaves. So sap flow is roughly 3 to 4 weeks long. So you really want to try and time it just right. When the sap starts flowing, you want to have your taps in so you can start collecting and maximize on sap collection. The reason it's important to maximize on sap collection is because on average it takes 40 gallons of sap to make 1 gallon of syrup, so a 40-to-1 ratio. We have 5 silver maple trees in our yard, and silver maples they're on the lower side for sugar content. I think they're about 1% sugar content, whereas like a sugar maple has 2% sugar content. So generally big mass-producing companies will tap sugar maples because of their higher sugar content. Basically they have to boil less down to get to that sugar content that they're looking for, and they come out with a higher quality product in the end. Last year was our first year tapping our silver maples in the yard, and I loved it. Don't get me wrong, the sugar content's less, but the flavor's still there, and I really enjoyed it. I'm excited to do it again this year, and actually I'm expanding our operation. 4 days ago I tapped 2 silver maples on my neighbor's yard, huge silver maples. I did 3 taps each on those trees. I have to go out there and check it yet today, but one of the buckets already had a couple inches of sap in it. And actually when I tapped it, when I pulled the drill bit out of the tree, you could hear a pressure release. It went psss, which was pretty neat, and then instantly started dripping sap out of the holes. So I got my taps in, and I'm tapping those trees already. As I mentioned, I've got 5 silver maples in my yard. I'm going to tap 3 of those maples this year. The neighbor to the south of me has also given me permission to tap some of his silver maples. I haven't gone over there to check it out yet though, and see what kind of trees he's got on his land. It's pretty windy out there today, so I'm not going to bother trying to get any audio while I'm out there tapping, but I'll get footage for you, and I can do a voice overlay and kind of walk you through the process of what I'm doing. So let's get out there and start milking some maples. In this video, I'm going to cover the way that I personally tap maples. There's many methods out there that you can learn from. I start by drilling a 3/8" hole, or 2 or 3, in the lid of a 5-gallon food-grade pail. I then slightly enlarge the hole with a deburring tool in order to fit the sap collection tube through the lid. I use a 5/16" brad point drill bit for my taps. On the left is a standard drill bit which I used last season, and on the right the brad point bit. I mark a 2-inch depth with electrical tape on the bit so I don't drill unnecessarily deep into the trees. The benefit to using a brad point bit is that it bites into the bark better than a traditional bit, preventing the tendency for the bit to walk across the surface of the tree. The spur design also makes for a smooth hole, which results in better sap flow. When tapping a tree that was tapped the previous season, make sure that you drill your new tap 6 inches away from either side of the old tap and no more than 2 feet above or below an existing hole, and always on the south-facing side of the tree, which receives the most sunlight. As mentioned earlier, I use a 5/16" tap as opposed to a traditional 7/16" tap. The reason being that the holes are 50% smaller, causing less internal damage to the tree. They close sooner after the tap is pulled, and studies have shown that they evacuate nearly as much sap as the larger, more damaging taps anyways. Drill the hole between 1.5 and 2 inches deep and at a slightly upward angle to allow the sap to flow out easier. Be sure you drill your holes in the afternoon or the evening on a warm day. Drilling into a tree that is frozen can cause splitting, which will damage your tree and reduce the amount of sap you'll be able to collect. I use modern heavy-duty food-grade plastic taps, which I will link in the description along with all the other tools I use in this video. If you are fortunate enough to own a property with an abundance of maples, it's a good idea to tap a tree one year and give it a break the following season. Since we have just a single acre with a few good producers, I tap the same trees annually. To determine how many taps a tree can support, wrap a string around the tree roughly 4.5 feet off the ground to get its circumference. Measure the length of the string where it overlaps itself and divide the number by pi, which is 3.14, to get the diameter of the tree. A tree needs to be at least 10 inches in diameter before it can support a single tap. A second tap can be added on trees 20 inches or more in diameter. Trees over 25 inches in diameter can support 3 taps, but it's not recommended to do any more than 3 taps on a single tree, regardless of its size. After tapping our trees, I took a walk over to the neighbors to check on the past 4 days of collection. This silver maple, which gets the most sun exposure of all the trees I've tapped, had a good few inches of sap in the pail. The sugar in the sap, being more dense than water, settles at the bottom of the pail. Being that it was still relatively cold this day, the pure water froze on top of the sugar-rich sap. Removing this frozen layer of pure water is a good way to reduce the amount of boiling time needed later in the process. What's left behind in the pail is a highly concentrated sugar water, which when boiled down further will turn into maple syrup. So that's going to wrap up part 1 of milking maples. Part 2 is going to be about the initial processing of the sap. Stay tuned for that. Take care, everyone.